Just to forewarn, I am recording this before fairies, when the fairy pack comes out in July. So everything I am saying is subject to change, but for now, this is most concrete evidence plus some theories. The small town of Forgotten Hollow has remained virtually unchanged for 4 generations. All of the original town founders have disappeared shortly after the town was founded, all except for Vladius Stroud. His great-grandson, Vladius Stroud V, still watches over the town to this day. It is the story of the Sims 4 occults and how they are all connected. To be forewarned, we're only talking about the true occults of The Sims 4, which means vampires, werewolves, and spellcasters. Technically, because of the information that will be shown later in the video, mermaids and aliens don't count as Sims 4, occults, and it'll make sense later in the video. Okay. Some background lore to set up. The main thing we'll be covering is both official Sims lore and a couple theories. So the main questions that we're going to answer today is, what was Operation Eternal Flame? How are all of these occult characters connected? And why are mermaids and aliens not? Start with the most famous supernatural occult, Vladius Stroud. Vlad has lived in Forgotten Hollow for 200 years. There's a statue of him in the town center, though the town thinks this is of his great-grandson, Count Vladius Stroud I. The local vampires know the truth, and that Vlad founded Forgotten Hollow and still runs it. So that is lore that you kind of can only learn through some blog posts and the little dialogue text that you get before opening the map. But I think everybody assumed that he was the original founder, but we will learn later that he wasn't the original, and he is actually kind of a dork when it comes to other vampires, because there are some that are a lot better than him. One of the gigs in The Sims 4 Get Famous is a company called Vladius Hardware. It claims to be founded by Vladius III, the master carpenter, specializing in luxurious coffins. Since Vlad has been alive for centuries, it can be assumed that Vladius III was the name he took on at that time to fit with the latest descendant, and took on an oddly similar-looking line of ancestors. To continue on, in one of the paintings found in Stroud Mansion that you can also buy from Build Buy, he was the sole survivor of a settling party of 25 Sims that suddenly disappeared. He was impacted so deeply that he never explained what happened to them, but founded the town on their last known location of their memory. That's kind of vague, but later it'll make sense. Per one of the vampire tombs, Count Vladius Stroud was the first sole survivor of the original settlers, which kind of adds on to all of that what I just said. Okay. So officially, because of, I'm also going to go off of teaser trailer lore and stuff, because that helps build the world a bit more, because back when both spellcasters and vampires came out, we didn't have clans like we do now with get together and werewolves. So there are official clans because of the teaser trailers and stuff, but they aren't in game. So I'll have to explain them offhand. So if I just name any names that you don't recognize, they're in the clans from the Maxis Gallery and the teaser trailers and all of the official art. And I'll build on all of them now. The 3 vampire games only shown through renders in galleries goes as follows. The Rebels, or the rebellious vampires, are made of 3 vampires who seem to focus on leading a rebellious, dastardly lifestyle. They are led by Miss Hell, which we'll go over later, Cat Cave, and Marcus Crow. The morals, or the virtuous vampires, seem to be focused on knowledge, creativity, and being good vampires. They are led by Samantha Gratz, Demetrius Troyer, and Brandy Woods. The morals are they're not the ones most built upon in the lore. They don't have any actual build by objects, or none of the objects mention them. So they're just kind of there, and they're only really seen through the official render art. So they're not going to be brought up after this. Okay, the nobles, or the noble vampires, are vampires that seem to focus on living a lavish lifestyle, partying, and having power over others. This seems to be further supported by their fashion styles, which is extremely formal and Victorian. In the official render art, it shows that Vlad seems to be a part of this group, but later in other lore entries into the Wikipedia and objects, it says he isn't, and he has his own solo tribe. So we'll figure that out. Also, from now on, I'm going to be calling Vladius Stroud, because there is another Vlad that shows up. Vlad Bloodvein in Ascent, and then Ellie de Vampiro. There are also 2 others, one named Rose and another unnamed vampire that we can assume is Innocent's lover. There are also the Vitor siblings. Originally, Vladius Stroud had turned Miss Hell, she shows up in a rendering of The Sims 4 of vampires, but also she has a mirror later on in Werewolves, which we'll get to explain her. So Vladius Stroud turns Miss Hell into a vampire, who then turns Caleb Vitor. Vlad, around the same time, turned Caleb's sister Lilith Vitor in a dialogue that we learn from Lilith's cousin Lily Hugh, which is in Werewolves, revealing that they appears to have been training Lilith to be his potential successor to the Stroud name before the siblings cut ties with him and actively shunned him from the community. It is also shown in these dialogues that he attempted to turn Lily's shoe but was unsuccessful, and that's how she became a werewolf. Miss Hell, according to the description of the mirror found in the Sims 4 Werewolves expansion, Miss Hell was originally born as a human named Maribel Smith, who was very, very proud of her straight white teeth. When she was turned into a vampire, she was so upset at not being able to see her reflection or her teeth again that she smashed her mirror and took on the villainous name Miss Hell. Miss Hell then goes on to turn Caleb Vitor, which we will learn later was payback at Vladius Stroud for what he had done. An official Sims 4 blog that was made to promote the Sims 4 season reveals that Vlad actually has a cousin named Arthur Climate in The Sims 4. The Climates reluctantly invite Vlad over to every Harvest Fest gathering, unaware that he is a vampire. Arthur Climate was a pre-made sim that was in the official promotional material for the Sims 4 season and can be downloaded from the gallery with his family. However, he is not already in the game. So now that we have all of the base lore and building for the Sims 4 vampires, we are going to move on to the Sims 4 spellcasters. The quiet town of Glimmerbrook may have more to it than it meets the eye. The Sims 4 spellcasters, shipped back in 2019, was actually, it's kind of a bad pack if you think about it. Many people will say that it's not very well built. And even more so, it is, because it's so unwell built, the spellcaster part in this video will probably be very short because it doesn't have any lore. Actually, in the game, most of the lore will come from the official promotional images and all of that, and it's going to be mostly speculation. So, yeah. The Sims 4 spellcasters have leaders of magic, and they're called sages. We have 3 in-game sages, and then we have 3 gallery-only sages that we see mostly in the promotional art. And the sages go as follows. The active sages that you can find in-game is Elphaba, Morgan Ember, and Simeon Silver Sweater. The retired sages that goes as follows is Keisha Hughes, Tess Dreyer, and Ethan Reeves. There are only the really core people we have to worry about because of their importance in the lore. The rest of the pack doesn't give us anything, minus the cross-compatibility wand that we'll talk about in the Werewolves. Keisha Hughes is a pre-made sim who appears in the official gameplay trailer for The Sims 4 Realm of Magic, and she can be found only in the gallery with Tess Dreyer and Ethan Ryers. According to the household description, Keisha is a former sage, but interestingly enough, is not a spellcaster when you pull her out of the gallery. This may be an error, or it may mean that Keisha underwent the rite of dissolution upon her retirement. In the trailer, she appears as Elphaba's predecessor as the sage of mischief magic. Oddly, she has the identical face to Ikamura Mori. This is just kind of a fun fact, but Ikamura Mori is one of those randomized sims that you'll probably sometimes get in your world. So she's already preset in your gallery, and she'll show up pretty often if you don't have like any other sims from like other games in your town. She's just made by Maxis. She was there when the game originally came out, and she's a party animal. Look at that. Fun fact. Tess Dryer is also a pre-made spellcaster who appears in the official gameplay trailer of the Spellcaster's Pack. She can be found in the gallery with the two mentioned before. And according to the household description, she was the former Untamed Magic sage, and in the trailer appears to be Morgan Ember's predecessor as the sage of the Untamed Magic. According to a post on the official Sims 4 Twitter, her official name is Anai, but the uploaded version of her has the beta name Tess. Tess is unable to become pregnant, nor able to get others pregnant, unless the player changes this gender detail in Create a Sim. This means, also fun fact, that her and Morgan Ember are the official two non-binary characters, because this was before, they were made before they had gender and sexuality in the game. So the only way to really put if a character was non-binary was to change if they could get people, non-binary and or trans, I'm sorry, was to change if they could get people pregnant and stuff. She is a spellcaster apprentice, even though she's technically a master. She should have like a small spell master trait, but we know like maxes and stuff, they don't really change that. Ethan Ryer is the man, the myth, the legend, is the third and final retired spellcaster. He can be found at the gallery with Tess and Keisha, and according to the household descriptions, is the former practical magical sage, and is the predecessor to Simeon Silversweater. I hate that name. Ethern's pants for his hot weather outfit are the Sims 4 Parenthood pants, and these pants are missing in the pack tag cast because pants are improperly tagged. So I guess they went back and they fixed it. Like they went back and they gave him hot weather wear, because they'll do that sometimes with some of their gallery stuff, and they gave him Parenthood pants. Just kind of weird. He was named after the famous Filipino billiards player Efron Beta-Reyes, who was nicknamed the Magician. That's kind of cool. The first official sage that we can meet in the game is Elphaba, which is a reference to Elphaba in The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, or as most people know her now, Wicked. Whose initials are of L. Frank Baum, the official writer of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Isn't that a cool thing? The next current sage that we can meet in the Spellcasters is clearly the most famous sim, Morgan Ember. They are the Untamed Magic sage, and they are non-binary. They are the official non-binary sim of The Sims 4. So, yeah. And this was before the patch. So, before the patch, they didn't have pronouns and stuff. You couldn't pick like their sexuality and stuff. Once they had the patch, they went back in and they changed their pronouns to they, them, and new saves. So if you open a save and you go check on his sim, their sim, they have they, them in their profile. This is really cool. The mystical ring description from the Crystal Creation stuff mentions them. Morgan Ember called they want their ring back. They are also referenced in Lovestruck's Cupid Corner website for some reason. I think this is because you can date them if they have Cupid Corners, but I've never seen this in gameplay. So comment down below if you've ever been able to date Morgan through their Cupid Corner app from Lovestruck. That would be really nice to hear that story. Next and finally is the Practical Magic Sage, Simeon Silversweater. That's kind of all there is about him. He's kind of a dork and not... There is literally nothing else on this guy. He is the Practical Magic. He was after Ethan Reyes, which was the best sim. And then that's it. He is such a boring character. And that is all core important lore from Sims 4 spellcasters. I told you this part was going to be short because we're only talking about the characters. Next is the Sims 4 werewolves, which is the best and where we're going to get most of our lore from, and that will lead into the actual building of a timeline. Whoa. Once upon a time, Moonwood Mills was filled with bustle and sound of nearby lumber mills. Today, the town is transformed. The rusted shells of the former industry provide cover for a handful of mysterious denizens who have sought out the wilderness-shrouded community. Basking in its remote and anonymous nature, it's a place with hidden history, and those who live here know if you dig deep enough, you are bound to discover some fascinating secrets. And this is where stuff gets fruit juicy, starting with Greg. Found in the game from many books and artifacts that can be found in Moonwood Mill, Greg was likely a mooncaster before he became a werewolf. While he was a mooncaster, it is implied that he had a familiar dog named Brutus. Despite his appearance as a middle-aged man in his human form, Lily Shue suspects that Greg is actually closer to the age of Gladius Stroud, though she has no proof of this. When viewing the description of Alina's trusty telescope, it reveals that Greg was married to a woman named Olivia Ludwig before she passed. Olivia, I don't know her name, but I'm gonna go with Olivia Ludwig. When viewing the description of a rug in the build by node, it is revealed that Greg's mother, who was also somehow a werewolf, was a crafter named Cornella Ludwig, who used a young Greg to test the durability of her handmade rugs. According to Rory Outlaw, if fury is an ocean, then Greg is drowning in it. Minus the Going Green pack, you can't make rugs. You can't have your sim craft rugs unless you have the eco lifestyles. That's what it's called. If you have eco lifestyles, then you can make like synthetic rugs. But that's the only pack where you can make rugs, and they are clearly not like the rugs that you have in werewolves, because werewolf rugs are very like intricate. They give like very like boho vibes, and that is not what you can get from eco lifestyle. So maybe this was just like a nice little tidbit, or maybe this is like a little nudge so that they might have more crafting, like sim crafting in the future. Who knows? Okay. Next is Olivia. Olivia Ludwig was a late life of Gregorius Ludwig, who is mentioned in the description of Olivia's trusty telescope object. She was a werewolf just like Greg, who discovered the effects of the lunar cycle that has on werewolves and discovered fish spam from her trusty telescope. Just from one powerful telescope, I guess. Cornella Ludwig was the late mother of Gregorius Ludwig, who is mentioned in the description of the rug and a chair in The Sims 4 Werewolves. She was a werewolf crafter who created handmade rugs for Ludwig's looms textiles and allowed a toddler Gregorius to test the durability of them. During the golden age of Starlight Boulevard and Get Famous, she had an opportunity to design theater chairs featuring her signature Lunavet upholstery, though lost the opportunity to Blandco. According to dialogue with Lily Shue, it is revealed that Lilith and Caleb are Lily's cousins, both on their maternal side, and that all of them grew up together. It is also revealed that none of the cousins are from the town they are now and instead moved in after being turned into occults. Lily spent years trapped as a feral werewolf until Christopher Volkov reached out to her and taught her how to control her fury. She is immensely grateful to the Moonwood Collective for giving her her life back. However, she still misses her cousins and wishes to regain the close relationship they had as children. To help her with this goal, she had chosen to remain immortal until she can settle her affairs with her sibling. Without her immortality, Lily believes that she would have likely passed away from old age already. Subsequently, she's reluctant to cure her lycanthropy. Next, we're going to talk about the Moonwood relics, which are the objects that you can only find in the world through scavenging as a werewolf. Actually, most of the lore comes from these, and they're pretty extensive. I will be trying to put them together as seamlessly as possible. So if it sounds like I'm stuttering or I'm going back, it's because I'm trying to like read this as fluidly as I wrote it. The cow plant skull and jaw. Based on its shape, the skull belongs to one of the tamed cow plants used by the Mooncasters, a spellcaster group that served as a counterpart to the Mooncasters. Both groups formed in response to the vampires' Operation Eternal Flame. They simply differed in method. Rather than harnessing the power of the moon to become werewolves, the Mooncasters instead tamed cow plants to use somewhat loyal companions in battle. There appears to be a carving on the jawbone, though the writing is hard to decipher. It currently reads, "I will." Avenge you is carved onto the following jawbone, originating to the black tip that seems to come from a skull. The words are carved hastily, with what appears to be an unusually sharp wolf claw. The final words devolve into a frenzied scratch cutting deep into the cow's brittle bone. A whiff of Greg's ominous scent lingers upon the bone, concentrating around the carving. Next artifact, canine familiar figurine, Brutus. The wolf figurine has a name engraved on the base, Brutus. You recall from your werewolf studies that this is the werewolf familiar of Gregorius Ludwig, one of the original Mooncasters. Brutus was a fearsome alpha wolf with fangs and claws sharper than any of his peers or predecessors. After the Mooncasters imbued themselves with the energy of their familiars, they adopted traits and aptitudes. Thanks to Brutus, Gregorius developed an unusually high aptitude for pushing limits of fury and a knack for winning fights. In this relic, we learn that the original Mooncasters fused their souls and or magical essence with their familiars. Gregorius gained the fury powers, swimming in the power of internal anger. Later in other statues, it also explains the familiars of other Mooncasters and the friends of Greg. One of them talking about the death of Nina, ending the allyship between the Mooncasters and the Mooncasters, and deepening Greg's incurable rage. Cowplant tablet. Another often forgotten aspect of the Mesopotamian culture was taming cowplants as stationary sentinels of defense, sometimes crossbreeding them to be mobile attack units, though it was quite difficult to safely reproduce mobile cowplants for obvious reasons. In modern times, it turns out that the Mooncasters were not the only group seeking unorthodox answers to the vampire problems during the Operation Eternal Flame. The Mooncasters attempted to adapt Mesopotamian cowplant taming practices to their magical needs. With initial success, and they had led a prosperous alliance with the Mooncasters against the vampire. Needless to say, it did not last long, however, after one of the tamed, heavy quotation marks, cowplants fed upon Nina Kia, an original Mooncaster and werewolf, and Gregorius and Adela's dearest friend. The Mesopotamian tablets, the wise wolfman. In your readings, you learned that many moons ago, in a land that we now know as Moonwood Mills, there was actually a home to a small ancient Mesopotamian city. Interestingly enough, Mesopotamians believed the greatest minds of their society were reborn as wolves and stored their wisdom in the moon via howl. As the cycle progressed toward the full moon, the growing light represented more and more wisdom. On the full night, Mesopotamians would sport wolf-like masks and robe and would ceremoniously draw upon the moon's stored wisdom. As the cycle progressed to a new moon, the light leaving the moon each night represented the stored wisdom disappearing back into the Mesopotamian people. As the first modern werewolves, the Moonwood Mills Mooncasters likely gleaned much of their information on harnessing the moon's powers from the study of the Mesopotamian people. Cool lore that we actually don't get to see in game, but we learn how Mooncasters, especially Avalon, yeah, gosh, I'm never gonna get her name right, learned their information and the connections to the moon further from science. The next few artifacts are actually from Twitter. This was when I guess, I don't know what they're called, the simmers, whoever worked on the pack at the time would tweet teaser stuff. They did this back in Strangeville, and they did it again with werewolves. So the image one was an image tweeted by Simgru Nova. The Mooncasters were here. Doesn't add much, but it establishes the font for the next few texts is for when people actually did the puzzle. Another was tweeted by Simgru Sallow. I survived the Century Conflict. It is safe to assume that the Century Conflict was Operation Eternal Flame and the leading war between the 4 spellcaster groups. 2 different tweeted from Simgru Frost and Simgru Rad. Forgive me, my dear Avelina, for I cannot do this without you. This seems to be a letter written by Greg after Avelina's death, but before he became the fury-filled beast that we know in game. We also know that Greg and Avelina were soulmates, bound and made together by the moon, so Gregor's was probably more distraught than a normal loss of his friends. Greg's book also tells about how werewolves came into existence when a group of spellcasters attempted to permanently cure the world of vampirism. However, the magic was so intense that it overwhelmed the sorcerers. A powerful magical surge of a magic overlord caused the spells to backfire terribly, inflicting the curse of lycanthropy upon the doomed magicians. As a result, an aggressive rivalry between the vampires and werewolves persists to this day. The lore. There is some cross-pack interaction, but there's not very much a lot. I actually don't have it here in my notes, but there is a wand that you can only get if you have both spellcasters and werewolves in it. I think it's called the Moon Wand, and it's a very, very cute wand. It has a blue moon and it's made of wood, and it's very, very cute. It doesn't add much lore, but it does help enhance the theory that the werewolves were once spellcasters. There's also the basic emotions and interactions between the Sims and stuff, but that doesn't really help with the lore. So we're gonna go on, we're gonna move from the official facts towards my theory. Once upon a time, there were spellcasters. And there were very many spellcasters. There were the ones who harnessed the power of the moon with their wolf familiars, whereas normal modern spellcasters pulled their magic from the world around them. And then there were the spellcasters that had cloned themselves and pulled the magic from their clones. But they had grown disgruntled and annoyed for how often they needed to take care of their own clones. Hence, they had started using magical shortcuts. They started feeding them potions and elixirs, so they did not have to care for their clones. And feeding so much magic to these already magical beings caused a horrible mutation and created vampires. The vampires, wanting to keep their pure, twisted magical essence from the potions, sucked out the magical plasma of their creators and became the original 25 vampires. The original 25 vampires figured out that they could take the powers of the spellcasters through plasma and make them immortal. And they also figured out if they did it just right, they could make other spellcasters into more powerful vampires. And they figured, this was great, why can't we do this more? And that's how we got Operation Eternal Flame. The operation to turn everything in the world, mostly spellcasters, into vampires that would do their bidding. That would be their little thralls, their little... Yeah, we get it. With the plague of the original 25 quickly growing, the remaining spellcasters and mooncasters started fighting back. And out of the creative magic of the spellcasters came the moocasters, who took cow plants and crossbred them to make a military-based mobile killing machine. They fought side by side as allies until one of the cow plants attacked and killed Yida, causing the mooncasters and moocasters to fight each other viciously. In the chaos, the original 25 targeted the vulnerable spellcasters who weren't at war and were thus vulnerable without assistance. Picking off the vulnerable spellcasters, the original sages of the school tried to do a spell that would have wiped out the vampires. However, it was so intense and so uncontrolled that it sent the school and the surrounding town into the magic realm, ripping it apart but not destroying it. But now they needed 3 totems of core casting to keep the existence of the magic realm alive. But now they needed 3 totems of core casting to keep magic and the magic realm from collapsing in on itself and destroying the magic. Now only accessible by the spellcasters and unable to access the magic realm, vampires turned to the remains of the mooncasters and moocasters, weak from their infighting. Sensing the danger approaching, the moocasters fled to Strangerville, becoming the original settlers and worshippers of the Mother, who promised them vengeance and the powers that they no longer had as moocasters. Left just to the lone mooncasters, the mooncasters fled across the mountain to the Moonwood Meadows and cast the spell originally cast in Glimmerbrook Town, thinking that their connection to the moon would stabilize the magic. But they were wrong. The spell backfired. Mixing with their anger and unstable celestial magic, they bonded with the essence of their familiars and their own magic, transforming into wild beasts known as werewolves. Unable to find the werewolves, the vampires settled across the mountainside in the Forgotten Hollow. Led by Vladius I, they built a private settlement, only that they could only find and only they could enter. Now a pause in the Century War, the werewolves expanded to Moonwood, creating Moonwood Mill. The original Mooncasters led a society in the new exploration of their powers. Avelina became obsessed with understanding their connection to the moon, and began neglecting her own need for answers. And Greg, unable to control his fury most nights, was going on blind rampages and unable to look after his wife. She became weak and disconnected from her strength, leaving her vulnerable to attack. As time passes, the Moonwood Mill became a prosperous working town, with werewolves and humans living side by side, though the humans did not know of the werewolves, until one fateful full moon night, when Greg uncontrollably lost a rampage through the forest. Avelina was left alone and weak. She was abducted by aliens for unknown reasons, leaving Greg to believe she had died. In his sorrow, he became stuck in a permanently furious state, immortal but unable to turn back human. Blinded by rage and grief of the loss of his wife, he turned to the town, revealing the secrets of Moonwood. The humans fled in fear for their lives, and in turn, the werewolves fled in fear for being hunted. Greg turned towards the tunnels, following the secret passage made by his packmate to a mine put in the Forgotten Hollow. Thinking the vampires used the tunnel once to abduct and kill his mate, he goes on a rampage, killing the original 25 and locking Vlad in the mines. He then returns to the mill, tearing it down and placing the debris in the passage to deter any new threat, leaving Moonwood Mill abandoned for an unknown period of time. Christopher, the only werewolf who stayed after the incident, set up the Moonwood Collective, a group meant at the time to rehome werewolves back into Moonwood, slowly but surely. Somehow, Gladius escapes the confinements of the mine. Hiding the deaths of the original 25, he plans to revive the vampire legacy throughout Turning. He targets the people of Lindenburg, bringing back the clan of the nobles who helped him turn others. He plans for Vlad Bloodvein to take his name after he dies. However, Bloodvein does not wish to lead the vampires. He just wants to enjoy the eternal party of being a vampire. 2 important families that fled Moonwood Mill were known as the Vitors and the Shoes. The children, Lilith, Caleb, and Lily, were not born when the incident occurred, and thus knew nothing about werewolves or vampires. When Lilith is first turned by Vlad in Sunset Boulevard, he hopes that she will take up the role that Bloodvein refuses, and she does. Later, when Caleb is turned by Miss Hell, the 2 siblings join up with Vlad to turn Lily's shoe, yet she flees, hiding in the caves of Forgotten Hollow, unknowing that the caves are connected to the mines of Moonwood Mill, where Greg prowls. Vlad does not follow Lily, haunted by the trauma of the mine and the loss caused by the beast that hides within. Lost in the mine, Lily becomes bitten by Greg, who mistakes her for a vampire. She somehow survives the transformation and becomes stuck in a somewhat feral state until Christopher finds her and brings her out of it. She decides to join the collective to help clear the werewolf name, which had been dirtied by propaganda spread by the vampire rebels during her undisclosed time in the cave. At some point, Lilith and Caleb realize the evil in the noble tribe and separate from the nobles, discounting Vlad and the Coven's archaic plans for vampiric supremacy. Spellcasters, now left to their peace in quiet Glimmerbrook, rebuilt their town, opening their doors back up to the old and new casters who wished to learn the original art of magic, now with new sages and a new way of thinking about magic. That is my theory about the Sims 4 spellcaster lore. And I actually have a nice little tree to help build upon, at least the vampires, because the vampire lineage is very hard to understand with just words. So I have a nice little family tree, I guess a pedigree tree, to help explain it. First, we start with the original 25, including Gladius Shroud. The original 25 are evil clones of spellcasters who were mutated from a curse of from all of the magic they had intake, which is a true thing. When a spellcaster overloads, they can have the chance to be cursed. But because these clones were already magical beings, the overload permanently cursed them into being plasma-sucking vampires. A long time passes, including the Operation Eternal Flame in the Century War, which leads to the unrightful killing of the original 24 from Greg. Vlad escapes into the mines and is trapped there because of Greg. Gladius escapes and turns to Windenburg and turns on to the rich of Windenburg, turning Vlad Bloodvein and D. Vampirio. These two are very cool Sims. If you wanted to add in vampires into your world and you kind of want them to be like Max's Max Sims, grab the clans from the gallery because they're not leveled. The original Max's ones aren't leveled. There is copies where people leveled them to match what fits them and stuff. So some of them are leveled and some of them are dead because they are dead. They're, spoiler alert, some die. Okay. The Vampirio turns Ina's unnamed lover, who goes on to turn her and her friend, Rose. Ina's unnamed lover dies, and Rose mysteriously disappears. Ina goes on to join Bloodvein and D. Vampirio in the Nobles clan, which Vlad leads. Vlad turns Miss Hell, who quickly goes crazy and disconnects from the other vampires. Bloodvein turns down the title of being Stroud's heir, and thus Lily is turned and is named the heir to the Stroud's name. Learning this, Miss Hell turns Caleb to get back at Vlad and Lilith. Caleb joins his sister with the nobles, cutting off from Miss Hell. Miss Hell turns Cat Cave and Marcus Crow, attempting to build their own gangs to rival the nobles' growing size. At some point, the Morals are turned into vampires. We don't really know who turned who, but we don't need to because they aren't an important clan. Lilith and adjacently Caleb disconnect from Vlad and the nobles, shunning their ideas and their plans for human genocide. The nobles shun Vlad due to his unsuccessful ventures as a vampire master. Bloodvein is named the new leader of the clan. At some point, Cat and Marcus Crow die from what we can assume, because in the trailers we see that both Cat Crow, no, that's not her name, what? Cat Cave and Marcus Crow die in the trailers, so we can assume that they die very, very quickly after being turned by Miss Hell, which we can assume is from neglect of her not actually being a good teacher to her clan. And that's kind of it. Now we have 1 missing vampire, 3 deceased, and a bunch of vampires running around. And that's kind of it for vampires and the entire pedigree. And that's kind of it for all I have. We can move on to now some less serious theories that I have that I sprinkled in before. We can assume that mermaids and are not spellcasters because they do not have any special interaction with any of the spellcaster types, like we see before. We can assume that the Sims 4 plant sims and cow plants that we can grow are the last remnant of the moo casters before they disappeared. But we have no real idea of where the moon casters really went. I have a theory that they went to Strangerville, finding the unemerged mother. They believe it to be magical, not alien, and they set up a small town and care for the dormant sapling until it emerged. The original moo casters became the first infected Townsville. She wasn't angry with them. She had no reason to be strange. Giving her followers a long life, wealth, and super skills magic once provided. Their reliance on the mother caused them to lose touch with the real magic, leading to their dependence on the mother's powers. Unfamiliar humans tried to cage the mother, wishing to have her powers for scientific advancement. The mother, now under threat, turned her docile followers into mindless zombies. The military keeps the mother and the followers contained till the mother breaks her and her followers free and spreads outwards towards the newly populated strange town, wishing to have back the peace that the scientists took from them. Questions that are left unanswered. Why aren't aliens and mermaids connected to the main supernaturals? Well, for multiple reasons. We can reasonably assume that aliens are not connected anyway with the supernatural. They are scientific beings, but not supernatural. 2, mermaids have no interaction or lore in their pack enough to build upon the connection between any other of the supernaturals, unlike the wands and the dialogues that the werewolf pack created. Also, a third thing, aliens and mermaids are so underdeveloped that you can't build anything from it. Like, I know there's lore in those packs that you can get, but those lores very little build on the aliens and the mermaids. They build on the idea of the world, which is great, but these beings don't have anything built upon them, which really, really sucks. Maybe one day the Sims will do a pack refresh on and Get to Work and Island Adventure. I think it's called Island Adventure, to update the supernaturals, because they are very, very nice supernaturals, but sadly there are supernaturals shoved into bigger packs that weren't very well cared for. They seem like last minute ideas. Why do I believe Avelina isn't dead? Avelina was obsessed with the stars and the moon, and many Sims 4 players know that gazing into the night using the telescope drastically raises your chances of being abducted by aliens. But gee, you shout, wouldn't have the aliens returned her? Well, no. More theory-savvy Sim lovers will know where I'm going with this. The abduction of Bella Goth. Avelina is a Sims 4 Bella. Abducted into the night mysteriously and never seen again, perhaps she will be replaced with an alien or a clone, but we may never know. Remember, this is all just theories built upon facts from the games, and this has been my video. I really hope that you stayed till the end, and if you did, thank you so much for supporting me. Please leave a like and a comment. It really helps me in the algorithm, and please subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. If we could get to like maybe 10 likes, I'll probably do something like this again. I have plenty of ideas because The Sims 4 is such an interesting pack with such interesting things that aren't really built upon, because it is a game made for creating your own stories, not paying attention to the stories already pre-implemented. But I really, really like doing this. This is really fun. I am a big Sims fan. All of the images in this video were either taken by me or pulled from the Sims 4 wiki. Also, thank you to the Sims 4 wiki for having such a nice built wiki. Your wiki was like really easy to navigate, which was kind of nice. That's all I have. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.